You're watching New Vision TV. This is news around East Africa. My name is Lynn Komjisha. We start off with Kenya. Now, a senior police officer has been killed and 3 others seriously injured by armed cattle rustlers in Kenya. The deceased and injured police officers were among the more than 50 police officers who recovered 50 cattle that was stolen in a raid on Sunday. During the raid, 2 children were also abducted by cattle rustlers in Samburu North Sub-County. The children were rescued Monday and the operation was moved to the following day. In Uganda, President Museveni has appealed to the leaders of Sudan to unite and reform state institutions so that they are more inclusive to all parties in the conflict. His message was delivered by Foreign Affairs Minister Sam Kutesa at a meeting convened by Egypt's President and African Union Chair Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo today. The meeting was meant to find an answer to the flare-ups in Sudan that resulted in the ouster of the country's president, Omar al-Bashir Ali, this month. Bashir stepped down from power after 3 decades at the helm of Sudan following a string of protests over a myriad of grievances driven by economic challenges. In Tanzania, the Tanzanian government has assured its citizens that it will win the war on plastic bags. Speaking during an interview aired on Tanzania's media platforms, the Minister of State in the Vice President's office, General Makamba, said that the bags are a big danger to lives and the environment and that the ban on plastic bags seeks to protect the public health. He thus called for public cooperation, warning that the stubborn culprits will not go unpunished. Now, news coming in from South Sudan. South Sudanese rebels have said that the world's youngest nation could go to war again if the 6-month delay to properly prepare a power-sharing government that seeks to end one of Africa's worst conflicts is denied. The warring parties earlier agreed to form a power-sharing government in May, but the rebel group led by Riek Machar is demanding for more time to integrate its fighters into the army and settle disputes over state boundaries. Meanwhile, President Salva Kiir is urging his former deputy to immediately return to South Sudan's capital to join the new administration. Moving away from East Africa, we'll take a look at what's making headlines elsewhere in the world. We'll start off with Sudan. Now, with President Omar al-Bashir out of power, focus is turning to the power behind his ousting. Among the leaders is surprisingly a young woman who ordinarily, in an Arab country, would not play a central role in politics, leave alone a revolution. Hers was the image that came to symbolize Sudan's uprising against longtime former President Bashir. Engineering and architecture student Ala Salah, 22, clad in white and standing on top of a car earlier this month, leading demonstrators in protests against al-Bashir's 30-year reign. Salah also represents the fact that for months, Sudanese women have been at the forefront of protests and sit-ins against al-Bashir. Women's role emboldened with photos of a group of female volunteers working to prepare meals for the protesters. Now, since April the 6th, the day the sit-in started outside the army headquarters, the team says it has served meals to at least 2,000 demonstrators a day. From Iran, Iranian legislators have overwhelmingly approved a bill that labels all U.S. military forces as terrorists a day after Washington ratcheted up pressure on Tehran by announcing that no country would any longer be exempt from U.S. sanctions if it continues to buy Iranian oil. The bill is a step further from one last week that saw legislators approve labeling just U.S. troops in the Middle East as terrorists, which was a response to the U.S. designation of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist group earlier this month. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration reimposed sanctions on Iran, including on its energy sector, in November last year after pulling out of the landmark 2015 nuclear deal between Iran and world powers. Now in Tunisia, a group of armed French nationals intercepted along the Tunisia-Libya border last week are members of France's intelligence services, according to an unnamed source in Tunisia's presidency who was quoted by Radio France International. Tunisia's government denied the story, which came amid reports suggesting French citizens may have assisted renegade military commander Khalifa Haftar as his forces attempt to capture the Libyan capital, Tripoli. Tunisian authorities said they stopped more than 20 Europeans carrying weapons last week, including 13 French citizens attempting to cross into the country from neighboring Libya. News coming in from Russia indicate that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un arrived in the Russian city of Vladivostok on Wednesday for a summit he's likely to use to seek support from Russian President Vladimir Putin, while Pyongyang's nuclear talks with Washington are in limbo. The armored train carrying Kim on his first official visit to Russia pulled into the quayside station in Vladivostok on the Pacific Ocean a few hours after crossing from North Korea into Russia. Earlier, at a stop on the border, Kim told Russian state television he was hoping for useful and successful discussions with Putin. The latest from Sri Lanka indicates that Islamic State claimed responsibility for the bomb attacks in Sri Lanka that killed 321 people in what officials believe was retaliation for assaults on mosques in New Zealand. One of the suicide bombers in the Easter Sunday terror attacks studied in the UK and Australia, it emerged today. The country's deputy defense minister did not name the terrorist or which university or college he attended. But he did say the attackers were all middle or upper class, well-educated from financially stable families, and that many of them had higher education. About 500 people were also wounded in these bombings. News from West Africa, police has rescued 216 human trafficking victims, mainly children, from forced labor and prostitution in a major operation in Benin and Nigeria, according to Interpol. Operation Epivel 2 involved 100 police officers across the two countries who rescued 157 child slaves, said the Global Police Organization, which coordinated the raids in early April. Many of the children were working in markets, peddling goods, carrying heavy loads or fetching water, while others worked as housemaids or were forced into prostitution. Of the minors rescued, 36 were boys and 121 were girls. Investigations are underway to dismantle the crime networks active in Benin and Nigeria, which are source, transit and destination countries for human trafficking, said Paul Stanfield, Interpol's Director of Organized and Emerging Crime. And that's all we had for you from around East Africa and around the world. My name is LANKA.